Ali, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to talk about your story because I kind of know it, but I've not heard it from you. So it's always, I've kind of got little bits of it, but it's always so much better when you hear it from the actual person. And I really love your site, and I got a chance to have a play around with it before this lockdown and had a little look at it, and I actually passed it on to a few of my clients as well. So this is going to be good. I'm excited to talk about it. So let's frame it up a little bit for the viewers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, what it does, and where you are in your life cycle here in Australia?
Definitely. And Steve, thanks for having me on here. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. So HeadBox launched into the Australian market earlier this year, February 2021. We're a British-born company, and I actually came to know HeadBox during my 6-year stint in the UK, which came to an end last year. I was working for global brands, doing their events, and like all good ideas, I was experiencing a number of pain points, and that's actually where I got introduced to HeadBox. And in truth, it was a game changer. The whole premise and its sort of concept of what it was doing in the event technology space and how it was going to make my life easier was wildly appealing. I'll jump into sort of what that actually means in a bit. But that took us on a really cool 3-year journey where we partnered. They were a startup of 5 people at the time. We were a multinational company. A fantastic partnership. And then, like all expats living abroad, I wanted to relocate back home, which was coincidentally timed with the pandemic, which is also was a massive blessing in disguise. And as I was sort of going through the process of thinking, well, I've established my career here in the UK and it's been amazing. How do I sort of uproot that and go back to Australia? What does that look like for me on Australian soil?
Yep.
At the same time, the CEO and founder of HeadBox, Andrew, actually came to me with the idea of going, well, from a client, you love what we do. Would you ever want to do this as your own business in Australia? A pretty unique and exciting opportunity. And so I sort of gripped that with both hands and ran with it.
It's funny how these things come about. You look at founders who start businesses, you look at people like yourself who've fallen into businesses and launched them over. It's these sort of sliding door moments that just sort of happen. And like you said, you came home at the same time as the pandemic. So let's go through your little story in terms of where you were that took you to London, and then obviously whilst you were in London, what you were doing, and obviously then you met HeadBox as well, and then to how you're applying that now, having launched HeadBox here. If we can go through that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I've worked in events my whole career, and what I've always tried to do is explore every facet of events, get experience in all different elements. So I kicked off my career in Brisbane. I'm originally from Queensland, and had a really cool 6 years there, 5 to 6 years working venue side, and then also jumped over to client side, and that gave me a fantastic experience of working with different clients on different events. But I think then sort of, and this is ingrained in me, is that kind of what's more, what else is out there? Yep. So naturally going, okay, well, don't just go to Sydney or Melbourne, but London, and really throw myself in the deep end there. I was pretty lucky. I've got family over there and a good base of friends. So that was an easy footing to land on.
Yep.
But what that then exposed me to in my 6 years in London is working on a different playing field. When you're in the centre of London, which is the hotspot of multinational companies, the decisions are made then and there, and they're putting on events that Australian events just aren't even in the realms of. And that was a great exposure. I worked for Barclaycard, working on their 50th birthday campaign, and
wow.
how we brought together 16 different countries to celebrate that. Now, not only are you throwing in the headache of time zones with an event like that, but also multicultural decisions and considerations. So again, just another level of learning and experience, which was brilliant. And that then also, I was really fortunate, sort of 3 successions in a row to be headhunted and go, this is another opportunity. And I think I used, and I had each company that I worked for, there was 3 different companies, and really gone, how much can I learn from this and how much can I absorb, and then go on to the next challenge.
Yep.
And the last company that I worked for in the UK was Dentsu, which is a multinational media company. And I was heading up their events team for the UK and Ireland business. Absolutely brilliant role. Dentsu is this company that loves to do things creatively, do things differently, and really go, what else can we do to engage both colleagues and clients? And again, that gave me a fantastic experience in working with partners such as Google and Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're working with the head offices of those companies in London, so just another level of exposure.
Yeah.
And that was a brilliant 3-year role that I was challenged in the sense of you're building out an event strategy for a company and going, how do we, let's talk about colleagues for a second, how do we really engage our 4,500 base colleague people from across UK and Ireland? So you're taking into considerations not just those in London, but also in smaller cities. And also defining events that really engage the company. Then also looking at what their client strategy looked at for that company too. When with all of this, and I think in any role that anyone works in, you start to really notice the pain points, and they start to become bigger than the nice things. And what I was finding within this, we did a huge volume of events. To give you an idea, in 2018, my team, which was myself and 2 other people, did 204 events.
Wow.
So you can probably appreciate that. For anyone who has any idea of organising an event, it's a fair workload. And one of the big pain points that was coming up was the time in which it took from really identifying this is the objective of the event, this is what we want to achieve, through to write the brief, do the venue sourcing or what did that stage look like, through to completion.
Yep.
And we just didn't simply have the capacity to do that. So that's when we started looking at, well, if we can't own it, how do we outsource it and bring in someone who's effectively an extension of our team? So we put an RFP out to see what partners could pop up. And there was your natural players in the industry who are global and we're very aware of. And then I was introduced to one being HeadBox. Never heard of them, didn't know what they're about. And I thought, I've got a big belief, always have a conversation. You never know where it can lead to.
Yep.
So we had that initial discussion on just going, what are you about? How can we potentially work together? And right from the get-go, from their CEO and founder, Andrew, down throughout the team was, we want to change the game. We want to bring the events industry up to the century that we're operating in, because right now it's very archaic. If you think about you want to go on a holiday when we're able to do that again, easily you can go online, book a hotel room, pay, done, you're over. That wasn't possible in the event space. You had to pick up the phone, you had to get the quotes. It was very manual and it was very laborious. So that was their whole game, was to really remove the mundane elements and bring tech into the forefront, but still keeping in mind that people play an integral role in the event booking process, the creative element, the negotiation, all of that. And I was captivated by it. I was like, look, if you're really serious about giving this a go, we'll partner with you and we'll give this a trial. That then led into a 3-year partnership.
Which is, and you're right, I've run events in not too far, not too long ago, where we were still faxing things over to each other, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So tell me, I think, and I can't, I still find that it's like the medical industry is the same. People are still faxes. Who has a fax anymore? It's quite hard to find a fax. But let's go back to HeadBox, because I think, now, from my understanding, it's a 3-sided marketplace. Is that the right way of looking at it? Can you explain it to me in terms of exactly how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right in the sense that it's a 3-sided marketplace that brings together event bookers, venues, and suppliers. So if you think of sort of the key elements that you need to bring together for an event, the technology that we've built helps somebody. Now I say somebody because we allow consumers to utilize our platform for free, and then we also partner with companies to support them in delivering their events.
Yep.
So I think right from that initial brief stage, we've built beautiful technology that helps somebody really easily and efficiently submit their brief. And then we've got a number of different ways in which we can work with both consumers and the corporates. And I'll talk about them in 2 different senses, because I guess it does sort of divide in that way.
Yeah.
The HeadBox's main bread and butter is partnering with large companies to support them in delivering their annual program of events. So what that looks like in practice, we've got the technology built that actually enables a company to track their entire annual program. That's actually quite rare. When you turn around to a company and say, do you know what you spend annually on events? Now, they might know for the particular marketing and events department, but then there's a lot of ad hoc spend across various different departments that it just isn't captured. There's actually then a lot of return on investment that we can then deliver for companies when that is all captured, and they can actually make really smart decisions with that data. But then they also need the resource, as I did when I was client side, to actually deliver those events. So we've got in-house events team that actually pick up the brief once it's put through our tech and then do all of that sourcing for them, but keeping it all within the technology. We're trying to get away from that back and forth over email, multiple attachments, all of that kind of that not so archaic way. Emails are still a fundamental way of operating, but streamlining it is probably the best way I can describe it.
Yes.
We then also support them with boots on the ground. So a company will say, look, for this particular flagship event that we're running, we're actually massively under-resourced. Great. Again, we're stepping in as an extension of their team. But not just the venue sourcing element for that, we're actually also bringing in the suppliers. So saying this is our vetted ecosystem of suppliers that we trust. We know they're brilliant. We've done all the due diligence. Bring them in. And again, we're saving our clients time and having to go out and source that. So a really, really neat solution. All of this data in which we're booking and planning the events all pulls through the back end. So at any given moment, a client can jump in there. Procurement and finance particularly love this area. They can jump in and go, year to date, that's what we spend. Q3 of that year, that's what we spend, but also look at it in a granular way. And as I say, once they've got that data, you can make such smart decisions with it.
Absolutely.
I'll jump back over to then the consumer side, because this part's really cool and really excites me. As I say, the B2B side was our main bread and butter, and where we will continue to operate in a strong capacity. But we realised that at consumer events, and especially right now, they're stronger than ever. Everyone will continue to want to hold the birthday party, the wedding, the anniversary, all of that. So we've actually built a really cool product that enables consumers to jump online, use it for free, submit their brief, and we then connect them with relevant venues. The best analogy to describe this is the Bumble for events. So it's a matchmaking service effectively for that birthday party with that venue.
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah.
I actually did. I gave it a go actually, and it's
Nice.
and I'm not a good event map planner. It's not been my strength, and I never intended to be. But it is incredibly easy. And I didn't get to quite submitting a brief because I didn't actually have one. I was just playing around. But yeah, you can see how it works. It's very very user friendly. It's very intuitive. Like software is these days. And yeah, I can see how. At some stage in our lives, this is going to be huge, because obviously the next question that you lead into is, where we are right now. So you launched this business in February when none of us believed we were going to get COVID here. How has this impacted you on so many levels? Because you've had to hire in COVID, you'd had to build an industry around events, where events are very uncertain and times are uncertain. You've had to onboard people remotely. My gosh, every kind of challenge that you could possibly have thrown at you, and completely opposite of the experience you were having in London, has been thrown at you. Yeah. So talk us through that. How have you coped? What have you done? Has it been good? Has it been bad? Let's hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. I'll start with relaying a conversation I had with one of my board members last week. He called for a check-in, and my board has been amazing and incredibly supportive. And he called for a check-in and said, "I've just got a question for you. If you knew what you know now this time last year, would you have still done it?"
Yep.
And wholeheartedly, the answer is yes. But we have had to be incredibly resilient. We chose consciously to launch in February when we weren't out of the pandemic. We were still very much in the midst of it. But what we saw was a great opportunity to bring this technology to Australia. It is, and coming back to your point that it is easy to use, we know we've got a beautiful product. And I say beautiful because it's easy for you to use for clients and also our partners. So when you've got a mature, refined product that I have seen the success of it across Europe, we know that we're going to do well here. We just need to endure this pandemic, and we'll come out the other side really strong. I'm a big sporting person. So I use the analogy with my team that we need to not be on the defense, but rather the attack. And we need to keep going through this pandemic and making headway with the regions that we launch in and the partners that we bring on board, because it will put us in an incredibly strong position in January when we are looking to have hit that vaccination level of 80%.
Yep.
And we can return to what the new normal looks like.
Well, I read this morning, literally, I read 20 minutes ago that I think in about 2 weeks' time, 5 people can have an event outside. So I don't know if there may be an opportunity there somewhere. I don't know.
We'll reduce the size of events that we do.
Lots and lots of tiny events.
It's promising.
So what do you think, it's interesting that you decided to launch then, and I kind of do understand why, but tell me what's been the hard, out of all those things and the resilience that you've gone through, we are now, 8 months later, what's been the hardest thing and what was the biggest learning that perhaps something, you would have gone into this eyes wide open with quite a few of the problems, but as you know, in running any business and any event, there's always things that happen that you don't expect. What's been the biggest one of those for you?
Probably how resilient we would have to be for our partners. And when I talk partners, we're saying sort of venue partners on the whole. They have been through hardship like no one. It's incredibly challenging for them when they've had to shut their doors. There's uncertainty around what government support there would be, uncertainty around when events can open up again. A lockdown happens very, very sharply and very swiftly. You don't come out of it in the same manner. No. So actually being that supportive partner that we promised that we would be from the outset, and maintaining that resilience through going, we're humans as well. We feel the toll, but actually reminding our team that we will come out of this stronger, and the more supportive we can be for our partners in the meantime will put us in good stead for that. That's probably one of the biggest points of reflection that I'm consistently looking at with myself and with the team. And I'm also trying to be really mindful of it with my team in what toll are they taking on? How much of a toll is this having on them working in lockdown and working in the events industry?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's a full-on scenario, isn't it? So let's go back to you a little bit more. Let's go back to you. So you've been overseas. I grew up in London, so I know London well. I've been here 20-odd years now, 21 years, I think. Crikey, goodness, which really shows some age. The one good thing about not having hair is you don't age as quickly because you don't go grey. But when I start saying numbers like that, I think everyone realises. So, you come from London, you come back, obviously, to Australia. You come into this pandemic, which is an unusual world. It's a very different lifestyle here than it is in London anyway. Is there anything any new habit or something that you've picked up because of the way that the world has sort of twisted and turned? Or is there any, perhaps even belief that might have changed whilst going through? Because it's a big change from where you were 3 years ago, where you are now.
Huge, yeah. Do you know, excuse me, the lovely thing that I have seen, I've always been a big believer in tech. So even having grown up as a country girl, I've always sort of had this fascination of what can tech do to make life simpler. And that's truly what we're doing. We're trying to make people's lives simpler and easier. 3 years ago, it wouldn't have been as common or as acceptable to have a Zoom meeting with a client. No. You would have had to go and meet them face to face, do that travel time and be there present. Actually, what the pandemic has enabled us to do is operate in a more virtual sense. Very rarely would you have thought that we'd be recording a podcast in a virtual sense.
Yes, very
And
rare.
that's also changed the game with events. And that, for me, has actually enabled us to set up a team that is geographically spread across Australia. Because I think before the pandemic, it would have had to be seen that I've either got to be tried to be in 3 different locations at once and really spread myself too thin, which would take a toll. But actually, with the way that we can all be connected now, I think that's actually supported us and how we've established this company here.
Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, as you know, my business is relatively new for me, and I've had previous businesses where I've had offices in other states, and I spend an enormous amount of time flying, and always the airport's always so far from the city. I actually think you spend more time in cabs than you do in planes. It drives me nuts. And we don't do that anymore. And I've got team members who are here who are now going to move to all these places they've always wanted to live, and it's not going to impact their career. So I think you're right. There's been some real interesting positives that have come out of this, which is exciting.
Definitely.
And what do you think? Do you think that when we get back to having events, do you see this huge boom coming? Do you see this? Because obviously one of the best things about what you do is that you save time and you make it much more efficient. Like you said, the back and forth, the quickness of finding venues, the whole enabling that you're going to do. Do you see this wave of madness coming in terms of events? I feel like that's going to happen. I don't know. What's your opinion?
Personally, with my friends, yes. I'll split it into two ways because with consumers are so much quicker to bounce back. They want to be holding that birthday party that got cancelled or the wedding that they've had to postpone. So we're already seeing in Brisbane, for example, a lot of consumer confidence in the event inquiries there. Companies, however, are a little bit more risk aware. So they're looking at something and going, okay, we probably can't actually do that 300-person event for two reasons of, is it the right thing to do from a brand reputation, especially if they're a listed company, which we're working with quite a few on their events at the moment. So they're actually re-looking at their events and breaking them down and saying, well, why don't we just do departmental events? They're smaller, they're safer, and they're also doing it from an employee consideration point that people have changed. They perhaps don't want to come to an all singing, all dancing Christmas party that holds 1,000 people. They might find that overwhelming. So they're really having to play to how people actually want to interact with one another. We're designing quite a cool event at the moment that is actually allowing people to go to different zones at the event. So there's sort of a nice quiet lounge, which they can just enjoy, chill out, or they can actually step into that bit more intense music scene, but really enabling people to really show up how they want. So I think it will differ in some respects. It will come back with a bang, especially in Sydney and Melbourne, where they've endured longer lockdowns, Melbourne especially.
Yes.
But then the bigger companies, I think, are going to be a bit more cautious.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I have a feeling there's going to be just there's this urge to let loose from a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I hope it does. I hope it does. I think the venue owners and all of the hospitality, they need a huge injection in the arm, and I hope that they get it. And we're coming into summer too, so
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I truly do hope, and that's a conversation we're having with a lot of companies, is think about this as supporting all of those venues, all of those bars, all of those restaurants that you've loved going to for the past however long. In order for them to actually sustain and come out of this strong, they need all of our support. So it's as well as putting on a great event for your colleagues, but it's in turn supporting them too.
Yeah, although I have to say the one thing I do like is the restaurant food being delivered to home. We're doing that a lot. And
it's fantastic, isn't it?
It's
yeah.
You know, you've actually got a hell of a lot more time to cook and when no one's cooking. But that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think I quite like that way of living. Not cheap, but I quite like that way of living. One of the questions we always ask, and I think you might have some interesting answers here because you've obviously been living overseas for some time as well. Podcasts and books, you know, people always like recommendations. There's so many out there. Are there any that have had a profound effect on you at all, or that you are dying to read or haven't got to yet?
So there's two that I'll share, and I think this is very reflective of the time that we're in. A podcast is actually a British podcaster, Elizabeth Day, and she created a series called How to Fail. And it's an interesting name. You think it's quite negative. Actually, she focuses on our biggest learnings come from our moments of failure, not our moments of success, which I fundamentally believe in as well. And she interviewed the former CEO of Google X, Mo Gaudet. And I would implore anyone to go and listen to it because it's a beautiful story on how he suffered immense loss by losing a son and how he created the algorithm for happiness. Sounds a bit kooky. I fully appreciate that.
Wow.
But when you listen to it, he unpacks it beautifully and in a way that anyone, I certainly don't have a mind like his, can digest and understand. And it gives us very simple tools and tips and tricks that we can implement in our own lives.
Gosh, I absolutely want to listen to that now you've just said that. And I wasn't aware of the backstory either. So I'm actually driving today because I came to the studio. So I might even listen to that on the way home because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And the other one, which I've actually got here with me.
Oh, look at this.
A friend
Product
of mine,
placement.
Who has, sorry?
Product placement, ready to go. I love it.
Yeah, I know. Well, purely because it is a beautiful book. And as I say, the moment of what we're going through right now, a friend of mine has just gone through remission with cancer. And she wrote this book, Life is Tough, But So Are You. And I would implore anyone as well to read that because whilst we thankfully may not have gone through cancer or anything as traumatic as she did, it is such a beautiful book that we can all look at and go, it is tough. Lockdown is tough. It doesn't feel great, but we'll get through it and we can dig deep and get in there.
Okay, cool. Right, last question. And I'm really interested to hear what you're going to say here, because you're obviously going to continue to grow as a business, and I know that you've been hiring. I guess if you are out there looking for a role, going to work for a company that is involved in events would not seem like a natural choice right now. People would be going, well, that might not seem like the most sensible career move with the uncertainty and all that kind of stuff. So let's blow all those rumors and negative thinking out the water. From your perspective, why would it be amazing to come and work for HeadBox right now?
You're spot on with everything that you've mentioned, but we have such exciting growth plans. To give you an idea of that, when we first mapped out for the launch into Australia, which we did last year, we were only going to launch in one city this year, that being Sydney. By March, we'd launched in 2, and by May, I'd had sign off from the board to launch in 3. Hopefully by year end, we would have launched in 4.
Wow.
That gives you a bit of an idea about probably my relentlessness and how I'm constantly just going, we can do this, we can do better, we can do more, but also a true reflection of how brilliant the team are. And I'm the first to say to anyone, I have the most incredible team who are supportive of not just my goals, but our goals. And we did a reflection 6 months in on the first 6 months to find out what the team loved, what they've learned, and time again it came up just how much they love the team. And if we can achieve what we're going to achieve together, it's going to be a pretty exciting journey.
Yeah, look, I've met some of your team, as you know, and the energy and positivity that's coming out of them is astounding. So I think that's a good answer. Fantastic.
I'm excited.
Ali, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed hearing it in your own words, and it's good to see that you're so upbeat and positive about everything, and I love that. And maybe that book is certainly something I think a lot of people would appreciate reading now as well. So I think that's a crack.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we will catch up again when we can one day. But in the meantime, I look forward to watching the restrictions raise and you guys exploding. Yeah. So good luck with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Loved being on here.
Thanks, Eddie.